Yo, I'm Matt Foryo, and by popular demand, I'm back here ready to chisel a new epic rap battle of history. So because so many of you wanted me to do this, and while I do want to point you towards my original content, I understand your need for my insight. So I'm gonna try to have a chisel this episode ready for each epic rap battle on their off week. So a Monday epic rap battle of history comes out. I'm going to try to have my analysis up on that Monday, schedule permitting. If you don't know who I am, I'm a rapper who makes things hard to explain for the sake of explaining them later. That's what Chisel this is. It may not be hard to understand the epic rap battles of history series on the surface, but what goes into creating something like it? Well, I don't know exactly what they do, but I can excavate a lot of philosophical roots by using reverse mathematics. Breaking these things apart and finding what they mean beneath that surface is really something worth thinking about. That being said, here is what a critical analysis is not. It is not a retelling of lyric meanings. There are a lot of meanings and references in each line, but other people spend lots of time compiling the internet's wealth of knowledge into one place so that you can read all the things that these lyrics mean. Places like Rap Genius. That's not critical analysis anymore. Forget that. I'm taking you further. Here is what the critical analysis is. It's a philosophical perspective. It's a retelling of the matchup created by E.R.R, and an outline of which lines do and do not propagate this philosophy forward. It's clear why two characters can be pitted against each other, but what conflicts are they inflicting upon each other? What inherent offenses and defenses are tagged to each character's name? George R.R. Martin and J.R.R. Tolkien is one of those real-life comparisons. Two fantasy authors with the same exact middle initials whose work is comparative by nature. So this is what I believe E.R.R does, and what I would also do if I was starting a foundation to create something like this. We have to fabricate this ideological war from certain perspectives of each character. Here's where Tolkien has his offenses. Well, Tolkien came first. Well, this puts him over the top in more ways than one. Because Tolkien came first, he can almost always make the case that Martin stole something from him, but also allows George Martin to make the case that Tolkien is outdated. Anything slightly comparable between the two universes can instantaneously be tagged as theft, either in the form of legitimacy or hyperbole, as we know rap battles can be both. Tolkien's second verse revolves around war. While Tolkien was a World War I veteran, Martin was a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War. This means that while Tolkien was brave enough to fight for his country, Martin purposefully avoided the draft by identifying as a conscientious objector, opting to perform other duties as a substitution for going to war. Not to say anything bad about either, because they're both rooted in the freedom of thought and the freedom of expression, but it matters as Tolkien's offense. Both of the fantasies that they write about are reminiscent of warlike themes. While Tolkien drew inspiration from facing war with his own eyes and his own hands and his own feet, Martin writes stories about war from a removed state of disapproval. Martin writes about how ugly and inhumane war is while never having actually experienced it firsthand like Tolkien did. On the other side, Tolkien survived this ultimate risk that he took and was able to create the story out of his experiences from it. Another idea that Tolkien uses in the last 4 lines of his first verse is to conjure the idea that Martin spoils the art of the fantasy genre.
Oh, we all know the world is full of chance and anarchy. So yes, it's true to life for characters that die randomly. But newsflash, the genre's called fantasy. It's meant to be unrealistic, you myopic vanity.
Because Martin makes unique decisions with the lives of his characters not reminiscent to the style of fantasy, Tolkien uses the I came first mentality to suggest that Martin rips the fantasy out of fantasy, ultimately soiling the brand that he claims to love and contribute to. On the other side, how about George Martin's offenses? Well, he's new, he's hip, and relatable, and is presently overwhelmingly successful on both paper and on television.
All your bad guys die, your good guys survive. We can tell what's gonna happen, a page in age 5. We went too deep, Professor Tweed Pants. We don't need the backstory on every fucking tree branch.
Contrary to George Martin, anything and everything that Tolkien would ever come to do has already been done. This means that Martin, while still being alive and able to write more, has endless opportunities to force his hand and outwrite Tolkien's work. Tolkien can't posthumously create something better than George Martin. He can only assert that what he's already created is better than what George Martin will ever create. In this sense, Martin is virtually unopposed moving forward, with no obstacles to overcome that may come at him from directions that he's not expecting. The art of competition demands that people compete with each other and force them to become better. Tolkien can't compete with Martin because he's not around anymore. So Martin has this inherent advantage where if he's going to ever aspire to be better than Tolkien, he will be better and he will continue to be better until he can't anymore. Martin can therefore continue to reach Tolkien's point and then go further than him, being alive to do so. On the flip side of that coin, Tolkien can claim that his work can never be outdone, even by a guy who still has time to try. It all depends on how each man words that sentiment to determine which will use it as their advantage. Now that we have our framework, you'll understand the lyrics and the philosophies moving forward. What do we know about creating our own world? If not in writing, we're doing it in Minecraft. If not in Minecraft, we're building things in real life. But what if you just have a completely blank slate? Tabula rasa, write anything that you want on this. With the laws of our own world off of the table, we can start from scratch and build lore to justify new laws. This is a battle of two people who created their own world, separate from the ones we live in. But their overlapping mythology inadvertently tied them together. We see this in the side angle where their settings collide. It's not two different worlds juxtaposed. Rather, their worlds weave together at this threshold and they're face to face in front of it. The characters that they created appear as figments of their imagination manifested in these new worlds. And almost each of them is seen wiping across the screen to justify transitions. The instrumental is triumphant and rap battle-ish as usual. The instrumental helps the rap in not being stale, if you know what I mean. Being so similar to each other, the characters don't have such a dynamic where they can clash between each other in two different styles like Mozart and Skrillex did. So to keep this feeling fresh and to feel like certain parts are different and distinct from other parts, the selective removal or addition of synths and drums at certain parts subconsciously tell us that a line is either excited,
'Cause there's a new literary lord in the ring,
calm and collected where a character has a handle over what they're saying,
I cut my teeth in the trenches of the Somme. You locked your Santa Claus ass through Vietnam.
just plain out cool.
Oh, you're a nerdy little nebbish and I may be dirty, but you got a hairy foot fetish, dog.
Visually, the settings and the characters were nice looking. That match flickering scene is very fitting, and it's one of the most visually appealing things ever done in the whole series. The performances were pretty good as well. Lloyd does justice with the fat mask for looking like a different person, and Peter looks so old. So old. Like I always say, there's a finite amount of ways to make two men look and act identically to so many different people. But they always do little things to make their characters unique. For example, Lloyd did this thing with his mouth where he barely opened it, somewhat reminiscent of a creepy basement dweller, if you know what I mean. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And while you can definitely hear that his mouth was kind of closing sometime, differentiated this voice from the likes of Socrates, Thomas Edison, and other disgruntled variations of Lloyd's normal rapping voice. That thing when he does this thing right here, oh yeah. That is the character that nails the George Martin idea of some guy who just stays in his basement all day long and lives in his own little world. Oh yeah, ladies. You get where I'm going with that. Peter also does this thing where he hunches over and he shapes his mouth a certain way to look like his dentures are about to fall out. You catch these things because they want you to feel like it's not just two guys dressed in costumes, and they do a good job at it. Now for the lyrics. And something that I found strikingly different from other ERBs and something that I really hope they continue to do in the future, actual rebuttals from previous lines were written into this. In real man-on-the-street rap battles, some of the best moments come from rebuttals, which are off-the-cuff retaliations to materials that the other rapper said in their previous verse, almost negating the effect that the original diss had. We see this in several places. Most evidently, Tolkien starts his verse by parodying George Martin's opening lines.
Gather up your trolls and your soldier elves, and your ants and your orcs and your wargs and your stings and dwarves and hand kings, queens, dragons, dwarves, horses, fortresses, magic and folk.
Instead of just listing these names with no follow-up, he ponders, and looking through the pages of his book, he realizes that these are all things that he's seen before. And if you recall one of the offenses for Tolkien I mentioned earlier, Tolkien can say, with certainty, that Martin bit off his style of fantasy. Now, something I would have done differently in regards to this idea and harnessing the power of such a high offense that Tolkien has over Martin, is I would move the line where Tolkien says,
You're a pirate, you even stole my RR.
which is such a creative line because Pirate and RR both have double meanings here. Pirate being R pirate, and the RR following up on that, and the R looking like a hook on the hand. But also pirating being a form of stealing intellectual property, something that Martin would be accused of if he had stolen the ideas from Tolkien series for his own series. So I would have put this line at the end of the opening 4-bar sequence that Tolkien says.
Queens, dragons, dwarves, horses, fortresses, magic, and swords. You have bit my whole shit. Your shit's subpar. You're a pirate. You even stole my RR.
Both characters do have an establishing triumphant 4th bar finisher.
There's a new literary lord in the ring. Want a war, George? Welcome to J.R.R.
However, Tolkien's does not turn Martin's work against him in the way that Martin's opening line, another literary lord in the ring, does. Also, by the time the RR thing is mentioned, it's far away from the context of the whole intellectual property theft idea that actually starts the verse. So if it wasn't just slapped in the middle, not only would it have been more in context, but it wouldn't have to been followed up with the syllable filler. I would have liked to seen that line at the end of the 4th bar, because it carries much more of an impact than I thought that it made. I mean, it's in the title, RR versus RR. Of course they capitalized on it and made a good reference to it instead of just saying that he stole the RR. They actually made a unique reference by repurposing the brand of it, but I would have liked to seen it at a different place so that it had more of that umph and it had more weight in the battle instead of just coming by in the middle and then being taken over by something else that would have appeared to be more important than it. And of course the way that they used it works, except it's more of a drive-by rather than a pull up and approach and punch in the face, you know what I'm talking about? But back to the rebuttals that I was talking about, here are some other instances.
I'll cut you like my teeth on Beauty and the Beast. I cut my teeth in the trenches of the Somme. Professor Tweed Pants, you lopped your Santa Claus ass through Vietnam. Man, it's hard for me to take criticism on clothes. I'm rock and roll, and I'm more rock and roll than you ever been. Don't believe me? Ask Led Zeppelin.
The rebuttal should definitely stick around. It really makes the whole idea of a rap battle really come to life more, because you really feel like they're not just coming at each other with writtens all the time, that they're actually having a back and forth. And there's actual cause and effect coming from each character. That cause and effect creates such more of a personal experience as if the two people are actually having at it with each other, rather than coming into it knowing what they were going to say and then completely ignoring everything that the opponent said. You gotta stick up for yourself sometimes, and Tolkien was the man in doing this, and that's why I think he won. Since he's really the only one that makes all of these rebuttals, it really solidifies his authority over George Martin, showing that he has a trick up his sleeve for anything that Martin tries, proving that the elders really do already know all the tricks in the book. The best sequence of lyrics, in my opinion, was Tolkien's second verse. He exploits his relationship with war and calls out the irony in Martin pretending like he knows what it's like.
I cut my teeth in the trenches of the Somme. You lopped your Santa Claus ass through Vietnam.
Makes 2 rebuttals from Martin's previous verse, and then repurposes a plot element in the perfect way to make a fat joke.
It's hard for me to take criticism on clothes from a dude who sends a raven to say hi to his toes.
That's the best line in the whole battle. I love the idea of repurposing source material to make it fit another context. He sends a raven as a way of communicating, and he sends it down to his toes because he can't see his toes because of his gut. I mean, that deserves its own episode of Chisel This, the whole repurposing context. It really demonstrates a grip of understanding how to manipulate language like that. I also like when they create a sequence of lyrics that allows certain disses and ideas to stack on top of each other, rather than juxtapose lines not having anything to do with each other, lending new disses to different stacks. And while it's good to have a lot of stacks, sometimes when you have 4 bars that are just stack after stack after stack after stack, it really demonstrates that the character has a grip on the battle and the actual philosophical ideas underneath it.
Yo, know the world is full of chance and anarchy. So yes, it's true to life for characters to die randomly. But newsflash, genres called fantasy. It's meant to be unrealistic. You might have been mad. Even the names of your characters suck. Got buffers and bullfers and brandy bugs. I got a second breakfast for all them goofy fucks. Lift up my gut and teabagging's my nuts.
The only place I think the lyrics might fall a little short is in the inclusion of certain subject material. Now, the common phrase in a rap battle is to say that you spit fire, and I hate just saying spit fire, but you'll see me allude to it a lot because I think it's so unique to repurpose it. Because it's such a juvenile concept, the art of using it in a unique manner is sort of a creative staple to rap battles. And there was a good opportunity to do this on both sides, and everybody gets a knee slap out of a good spit and fire joke. Most blatantly, there's no reference to the title of Martin's Martin's series of books in which A Game of Thrones comes from, this being titled A Song of Ice and Fire. That title is begging to be in a rap battle! Even something juvenile, like when I'm in the bunker writing my raps, ice isn't the only element I infuse into my style. To where it would lead into, ice isn't the only element, I sing and spit fire. Or, there's another element other than ice, I sing and spit fire. Something like that could have been an easy, surface, relatable, easy to get line. And again, everybody gets a knee slap out of it. Now, there's a huge difference between stupid lines and knee slappers, so don't get me wrong here. I'll explain this more in my next episode of Chisel's instructional series, Relevant Rhyming, so make sure you subscribe when it comes out. On Tolkien's side, I was surprised that there was no direct mention of Middle-earth. I mean, when you're looking to repurpose these things, just look up what's at the middle of the earth, what's at the center of the earth. And right there, the first thing that comes up, described by psc.edu, says right there, deeper yet, at the inner core, the pressure is so great, 3.5 million times surface pressure, that iron solidifies, even though temperature is believed to exceed 11,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of the sun. Spit hot fire. In very literal terms, it would make sense for Tolkien to say something, and again, something knee-slappish, like, you're under real hot pressure when you step in Middle-earth. Just as something like an introductory thing to let him know where he is and what's going to happen to him if he comes any closer. Also, while the popular term brace yourself, by the nature of its definition, works well at the beginning of the rap, it could have been repurposed in the same way that I've been suggesting and in the same way that the Raven line was. He could have said something like, I'll break your brittle body so bad you'll need to brace yourself, suggesting that Tolkien is so old and crippled that he will need body braces to help heal his wounds after Martin body slams him with raps. I also think Tolkien missed a good opportunity to rebut the Goonies versus Boobies claim.
Ditch the Goonies and cast a couple boobies!
Where he could have easily suggested that Martin only writes about sexual content because he can't get girls on his own. Easy layup right there, could have said anything, could have tied it in with him being big, could have tied it into the whole I sit in my basement and write all day idea. But I do think that much of this is a fault of such an expansive lore that many viewers, like myself who don't keep up with these universes, could feel alienated by. It's definitely challenging with an audience like theirs to balance fulfilling the entertainment of hardcore fans versus surface dwellers. Ultimately, it's very difficult to dive deep enough into these kinds of things to create fan service and open the doors to new fans at the same time. I totally get that, and that's why I've laid off criticizing them as much as I used to. I can't judge their execution solely based on what I feel is representative of all the philosophies I unearth. They have to please many more people than me while doing something that should really be just for fun. That's why I'm reluctant to even make any more of these episodes. It's why I wasn't gonna make this one until I saw how many people commented only because they wanted to see this. So like I always say, Epic Rap Battles has my respect. They've introduced me to a lot of people. From where I am, I'm in my bedroom right now, and I do these things alone. I'm clearly not big enough to be on par with Epic Rap Battles of History, which is why I take time just pouring out my ideologies about the whole franchise, and seeing what you make of it, and hoping that even if Epic Rap Battles of History crew is watching, hoping that they can learn something more. Maybe if I thought of something that they didn't. Maybe if I can maybe shine a light on the best way to start a foundation for these kinds of ideological matchups, and then building things on top of there. This is all interpretive, it's all subjective, so you take it for what it is. At the end of the day, it's just me sitting here talking to you, and it's your interpretation of the words that I say that keeps me coming back here and doing it again for you. And just so you know, I'm calling this right now. Season 5 opened with a closed book. Season 5 will end with a closed book. I've heard rumors that this is the last season. I don't know. So yeah, I'm going to try to have these out every other Monday while Epic Rap Battles is in the middle of their wave. I want to work on my own stuff. I want to work with other people who have asked me to work with them. And I need to get stuff done for my career. It doesn't sound like much, but I have to start working for my career yesterday. So it's tough to balance that, but I know you guys are very loyal to me. I try to keep making things, but you have to patronize it. You have to check it out. For the people who only watch these, check out my original raps. Just check it out and see the things that I make and try to come up with your own ideas. Make your own Chisel This episodes about the raps that I do that I don't make episodes about. I want to inspire people, and I want people to derive things from me and put it into their own perspectives. And this was a battle about writers, and I'm a writer, so it makes perfect sense. Tolkien and George Martin, you just got chiseled. I'm Matt Forio, and that's all for you today.